charged. So basically, yeah, it's lodged there for you to get it back, and it can be up to 4 weeks' rent.
Okay, so the problem here is that the landlord is doing everything he can to keep it, and it sounds pretty dodgy. Now, a bond is supposed to cover damage to the property and is not supposed to cover fair wear and tear. So for minor things that are because of wear and tear, they aren't covered by the bond. Where you put a hole in the wall or something, that's where the bond is designed to cover.
Awesome. Cheers, everyone. Good discussion. So now, while we're on the subject of money, let's have a look at the laws surrounding the rent.
Okay, so I'm in a house, and I've frequently been falling behind on my rent. This is a hypothetical situation, of course. I'm currently 14 days behind, and my landlord wants to kick me out and find more reliable tenants. What can my landlord do here?
Well, the first thing to do here, Jonty, is talk. So if you guys can talk about it, it's actually much easier for the landlord to keep you around than worry about finding new tenants generally, unless, like you said, you're causing constant problems. So try and talk it out first and see if there's any particular reason you've fallen behind. I think this is one of those general good guidelines for any sort of legal problem, is that people generally don't talk about their disputes with the other party enough. So this is one of those situations where talking to the landlord might be able to sort it out before worrying about lawyers or anything like that. But if the landlord, of course, doesn't want to do that, then they can issue a 14-day notice to request that you remedy the breach, so basically pay your arrears back.
Okay, and what would be the consequences if I failed to pay within those 14 days?
The landlord can apply to the Tenancy Tribunal for rent arrears, but they can only kick you out after you've fallen 21 days behind in your rent. So it's quite common to issue a notice in this situation in anticipation of the tenant falling behind by 21 days. So what that basically means is you've fallen 14 days behind. The landlord will issue you a notice and also start proceedings in a Tenancy Tribunal to try and kick you out, so that when you fall 7 more days behind, then they can kick you out, basically.
Just to follow up on the rent issue, it's important as well to talk about rent increases. There are specific rules around this, so the landlord can only increase the rent every 180 days, that's 180 days, and has to give 60 days notice to the tenant. There's not a lot of regulation around this area, but it may be considered unfair to increase the rent beyond market rent for the area. So the landlords out there, so for the landlords out there, it is not advisable to do this. It could all be wound back again into the tribunal.
For sure, and one more thing to add to that is for fixed term tenancies, you cannot increase the rent unless there's a mutual agreement there. So that's a very important point, because there are so many fixed term tenancies in Auckland these days, particularly the university style student accommodation in the city area, and they usually last for about a year, 6 months to a year. So we're going to pick this discussion back up shortly, but in the meantime, we'll catch up with what's happening in the news. So don't go anywhere. You're on Radio Waitakere Law here on Planet FM.
Radio Waitakere Law News.
Leading the news is a big shake-up for beneficiaries out there. The much debated and much feared welfare reform package is coming through at the moment, and many of the previous recommendations from the Welfare Working Group report look like being... Now, these are much debated, like I said, and the big news at the moment is the welfare reforms will require solo parents to look for part-time work when their youngest child turns 5, and full-time work when their youngest child turns 14. For solo parents who have further children while on the DPB, they're going to need to start job hunting when their youngest child turns 1 year old. Whether the jobs are out there for these people to go to is another matter, but we'll leave that debate there, I think. As we go to air, the parliamentary inquiry on the determinants of wellbeing for Maori children is due to close, and it will be great if we could get as many submissions as possible. We've submitted on the Green Paper for Vulnerable Children and the Family Court Review recently, and stayed up all night writing it, I'd imagine. And these submissions are now on our website, so check it out at www.waitakere.org.nz. Legal aid reforms have been put off until the end of all this process, which is a really great idea, so we're quite happy about that. Finally, local government probably has as much impact in our lives as national government, but it certainly doesn't get the sort of attention, the sort of press that it probably should. So if you're interested in checking out what our local boards are doing, then there are meetings this coming week in all 3 Waitakere local board areas. The details are available at the Auckland Council website, and we'll put them up on our website as well. So do check that out. And that's our news for this month.
Okay, so we're back with Radio Waitakere Law. Like we said, we're talking about tenancy law today. Now, if you've got any problems with tenancy, then we may be able to help you. You need to walk into our legal clinics at our office, which is at 1A Trading Place in Henderson, and we operate our legal clinics from 9:30 to 11 in the mornings, Monday to Thursdays. We also have walk-in clinics in Northcote and at the Citizens Advice Bureau on Ernie Mays Street from 10 till 12 on Mondays, and also at the Birkenhead Winds office from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. on Mondays as well. You can check this out at the website, which is www.waitakerelaw.org.nz. Now let's get back into it.
Yeah, sure, Jonty. Now we should talk about moving in for a bit more. We've got some handy tips for people moving into a house to make sure they are keeping themselves safe and their rights protected. Tenancies always start off rosy, but you just never know whether your landlord could turn out to be dodgy and, for example, try and keep your bond. So the first tip we have is to bring a camera with you on your move-in date. Take pictures of the areas of the house with minor damage, conduct a property inspection with the landlord, and take careful note of any problem areas. Finally, make sure you have a tenancy agreement with all of this information on it.
Yeah, that camera idea is actually a really good one. I actually have personal experience with that, where you move into a house and there are some minor sort of paint chips off the wall, things like that. Those are good things to take photos of, because that could come back at you later when the landlord tries to keep the bond, as what happened with me, and we eventually got our bond back because we had that sort of proof. Another thing is property inspections can only be done once every 4 weeks, and 48 hours notice needs to be given generally. We've had a few cases about this where the landlord has pretty much been harassing the poor tenants, and that's really not on at all. So make sure there's proof of rent being paid in as well, as this could be